Use your powers for evil.
Evil? Your evil is mine.
To Next Stop Everywhere, the award-winning podcast, the Doctor Who podcast, the award-winning Doctor Who podcast. I'm Charles Skaggs, and with me is my co-award-winning partner in time, Jesse Jackson.
Hello, Charles. Award-winning, do you say?
I do say. I dare say.
Wow.
Yeah, so we just kind of got the news here over the past week that apparently yours truly, Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast, somehow won an award at the Indie PopCon, the 2018 Indie PopCon. So for Best Science Fiction Series podcast?
Yes, Best Science Fiction Fantasy podcast. We're really excited about it. It's kind of cool to win an award.
Yep.
We will probably release this. We look for a second feed, but what we had to do is you had to submit a sample to a committee, and you had to give them some details about who is the host, who's the editor,
right?
Where do you record it from? And then give them a sample of a couple of episodes, and it couldn't be over 15 minutes long. And
right.
So it was definitely a team effort. Charles wrote the kind of summary, the elevator pitch on what we are.
I want to give you special credit because you were kind enough to record the audio for that, and you also helped put the submission together. So I want to give you a special thanks, Jesse.
Well, thanks. It was nice.
Credit where credit is due.
Well, it was funny because if you guys will hear it, I cut little pieces out. We talked. It wrote itself. The episode where we recorded the morning that Jodie was announced. I just took that straight, cut that and gave it.
Well, we were so enthusiastic, so I mean, it was perfect for that.
It was.
We're just geeking out really hard over that.
We were.
Apparently, geeking out really hard gets you awards, so that's cool.
So, right? So our podcast overlord / dad, Rob Southgate, will be able to put award-winning on our website.
Right.
And
hopefully this means we can get our episodes posted.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Wow, Charles, why do you poke the bear? Anyway.
I have to poke the bear because I want our episodes posted. It's the only way to get it. Apparently that's the only way to do it. As I found out with the Phantom Zone after a 3-episode backlog. So just kind of, Rob is so busy, you just kind of have to remind him and go, hey, what about these podcasts? Yes. So everyone.
Yes.
So yes. So
very exciting.
Thanks
news.
to Indie PopCon for giving us this award. We're extremely appreciative of it.
Yeah.
And hopefully this won't be the last award Next Stop Everywhere gets.
Absolutely. So anyway, thank you. Look for the episode shortly. Charles and I will talk a little bit more about that in a very brief we'll kind of do a brief introduction and then we'll just put the submission.
Yep,
but,
it's just kind of cool that we could say the award-winning podcast now.
It is. I know it's a small thing,
and it's not a lie. So we're not
exactly.
we're not making this up. We actually won an award.
Yeah.
So today though, We're going to talk some Torchwood as we continue our Chris Chibnall Torchwood series.
Yes.
As we talk about End of Days, the season finale for Torchwood Series 1 from 2006, which of course was the 13th and final episode of Series 1. Written, of course, by Chris Chibnall, directed by Ashley Way. And I'm looking forward to talking about this with you, Jesse.
Yeah, I am too. There's a lot to discuss on this, and I think this is an episode that gives me even more excitement about how Chibnall is going to do the Doctor, the series.
Right.
Yeah.
So you kind of get. Do you think you have a better feel after going through these once again of how he might approach Doctor Who Series 11?
Absolutely, I do, and as I'm sure we'll cover that as we discuss. But
Okay.
to start out with,
Yes.
you always ask me first, so I'm going to turn it around and ask you.
Oh.
What were your thoughts of this episode?
Overall, I think it's an okay for series finale, but it doesn't seem to be aging well. As I've rewatched it, the CGI is not holding up. Some of it's a little creaky by 2018 standards, and the episode for the most part is good, but it's a little disjointed and it doesn't flow very well, in my opinion.
I am so glad you said that because that's why I asked you first, because I was trying to get a temperature of where you are.
Right.
I think brilliant season finale episodes, you can jump in and you're immediately in that world again.
Right, like on Doctor Who or
yeah.
what have you. Yes.
Right.
But for this one, now we've had the benefit of actually watching the entire series, so I wasn't completely lost.
No, but it has been many years since I'd seen.
Yes.
So I had watched the first episode before we did the second episode 2 weeks ago. And then I had to watch the episode before this because I remember the Captain Jack Harkness being an episode that I really loved.
Right.
And watching it again, I still loved it. I thought it was really well done. But there was a lot covered in this episode where I went, I don't remember that happening. Oh,
right.
Did that happen? And so I did not have...
I think there's just so many callbacks to previous episodes.
Yes.
You had to be really up on your Torchwood. Now, it rewarded the faithful viewer, but anybody coming in cold might be turned off by it.
And that's why I feel optimistic about his Doctor Who, because I think he can stick the landing on the seasons of Doctor Who I love are when you get a standalone episode, but together they build a full novel of TV.
Right.
I think Fringe was really good at that. I certainly think Babylon 5 was excellent at that. And so I am hoping this shows that if he's running the whole thing, he will be able to give us a really solid season with a bunch of threads that he loops together in the finale.
Right, because, well, obviously Chibnall's had 12 more years of experience on TV since this episode. So one would have liked to hope and think that he's learned a little more since then.
Well, Charles, I think if you go back and listen to our first Next Stop Everywhere podcast, it may prove that you don't always get better at what you're doing. No, I'm kidding. I do.
No, we get worse. Apparently,
yeah. No, I do think we have improved, and because we care about what we do, we learn. Even though we've been friends for 20 years, I mean, we learned more about podcasting together, and we've been able to improve. So,
right.
The other thing I don't like, and I hope I'm not stepping into your subjects, but You know the joke, I don't like it when mommy and daddy fight. You know, I
Well, we're
Torchwood
gonna
is a
we
yeah,
will
okay.
talk about that in topic one.
Okay, so all right, well I'm gonna as they say in the business world, I'm gonna table my comments till we get to it.
Well, you won't have to table it very long. Let's just
Okay.
dive right in while we're
Okay.
talking about it. All right. I did have some, like some cast members,
Go
but
ahead, please.
really quickly. So we had the return of Caroline Chikezi, who played Lisa Hallett, the Cyberwoman from that female Cyberman episode earlier in the season. She was in some movies. She was in Aeon Flux and Aragon, and also she was recently on the Shannara Chronicles.
Okay.
And then we had Louise Delamere as Diane Holmes, the time lost pilot that ends up romantically involved with Owen.
Yeah,
She was in the movie Judge Dredd.
I wanted to see that episode again.
Yeah.
After that, I remember that being good, and the callback just made me want to go.
Right.
Should I have watched the whole season? Anyway, go
Right,
ahead.
exactly. But it's good that it kind of inspires you to want to watch more, so that's a good thing.
Yes.
And then lastly, I had Matthew Gravel, who just plays a doctor in this episode. He was the character Joe Miller in Broadchurch, which was obviously overseen by Chris Chibnall. So he was one of the significant characters on Broadchurch. And that's all I had, so we can just dive right into our main topic. And first thing I want to talk about, hopefully you can guess the theme for this week, if you're a movie buff. I don't have to take this abuse from you. I've got hundreds of people trying to abuse me.
Very nice.
And this, of course, is Jack and Gwen. And Jack's kind of a dick in this episode. And I want to get your thoughts. And Gwen kind of being all over the place in this. And she gives as good as she gets. She even drops a couple of F-bombs on Jack. And I want to get your thoughts on Jack and Gwen in this episode. Because this is a very, very contentious episode for them.
It is.
The rest of the Torchwood team.
And there is a lot of technobabble about the rift and how, we saved people, but it also is going to hurt people. It was almost a little too technobabble for me. I kind of got confused on it.
Well, I think the basic gist of this episode is following up on events from the previous episode. Owen opens up, or starts to open up the rift to allow Jack to come back from his being stuck in World War II.
Yeah.
And as a result of this, everything's gone to hell in a handbasket. And there's all kinds of time is kind of things are filtering through the rift from the past, and ultimately it leads to the release of Abaddon, this big giant Hellboy-looking monster that Jack has to face off at the end of the episode. So that's basically the gist of this episode.
Yeah, and
Jack is not happy what Owen did,
right.
and is willing to kick him off the team for it.
Yeah, it was.
Jack isn't very likable in this episode.
He is not at all likable, and I don't know if I understand enough why he's so angry.
Right.
I
think he comes off as that he was willing to sacrifice himself and be stuck in World War II if it didn't allow everything else to happen. Like, he was willing to take that sacrifice. And I think he's kind of mad that Owen did what he did against orders.
Yeah, and I wish there are ways to be not this disagreeable.
Right.
To understand, okay, I understand you did what you had to do. Now then, let's work together to fix this.
Yeah, as a manager yourself, you probably can
Right.
kind of would approach it probably a lot different than Jack did.
I really would, Charles, and not to put my real world hat on, but um,
Yeah, who wants the real world on a Doctor
yeah,
Who podcast? Come
he
on,
is. I
real
mean,
world.
he is a dick,
Yeah,
and if you're getting if you're leading your team and
right.
it's a point where they are mutiny,
Yeah,
I
that's
just
because they all turn on him in this episode.
yeah.
And Gwen, obviously, she's got her reasons because Reese, at this point, is dead,
Mhm.
and she's looking to bring him back. But Owen and even Ianto and Tosh
Yeah.
turn on Jack, and they're willing to because they have experiences. So, and we'll talk about that later here in a minute.
And I'm going to give a very outdated pop
Right.
culture reference, but he almost does a Jeannie C. Riley Harper Valley PTA
Wow,
scenario with them, right? That is
wow,
very,
you dug deep for that one.
yes, but
that's as obscure as it gets.
yeah, but for those of you who remember, and if not, Google it. The whole song is someone going to and pointing out how everyone is a hypocrite and
Right.
pointing out all their flaws, and Jack does that.
Yeah, Jack does that. I mean, he calls out, obviously he's going to call out Owen, but
Yeah.
he even goes after Ianto. He even goes after Tosh, two of the nicest people on the team.
Yes.
And he calls out Gwen for sleeping around with Owen on Reese, which had happened earlier in the season.
And I didn't remember that, which kind of recrushed me.
And I'm not
because-
sure why he does that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. That just it just seems so unnecessary. But for some reason he's just so angry at this point. I think maybe he's just feeling hurt because of Owen. He feels like Owen betrayed. Jack is very okay, you do what I say.
Yes.
And it seems like if you don't do what he says, he has a very serious problem with it. At least at this point.
Yeah. And one of the things that always bothered me as a child and bothered
Right.
me as an employee, the whole "do as I say, not as I do" line. And and there's your way, there's my way or the highway. And
Right.
Jack is definitely saying this is my way, and I'm not going to do anything else.
Now, what did you think of Gwen in this episode? Because, she obviously has she's in an extremely emotional state after Reese's death. First, she's trying to protect him because Billis, what's his name? Billis Manger, the bad guy of this episode.
The creepy caretaker, which is great role.
The creepy guy of this clock shop that apparently can just go back and forth through time at will without even a TARDIS. He kind of gives Gwen a vision of Reese's death, which sends her scrambling to save him, and she brings him to Torchwood and throws him in a cell.
Yeah.
And he's just like, wait, what are you doing? And this has to be because he has no clue at this point what she's about with Torchwood. She's compartmentalized and kept that from him. So I want to get your thoughts on what you thought of Reese and Gwen, or how Gwen treats Reese in this episode, and then her reaction to his death.
There's a little bit of guilt. Reese is a great boyfriend/partner.
Right.
He has very supportive of her. We talked about that in the earlier episode. He talked about being a where does he think that she works?
I think it's just she's got a government job or something.
Yeah, so I'm a government widow,
Yeah,
and
right.
he always makes that joke. He keeps the home fires burning, so to speak.
Right. Yeah, I mean he's home cleaning the oven
Yeah.
and stuff. So yeah, he's Mr. Mom at this point.
Yeah.
Even though they don't have kids, but
And
he's perfectly happy with that. But he does feel he doesn't see her enough these
Right.
days.
And I understand her drive to save his life, and then the idea, I would feel similar if
Right.
I've been around as much, timey-wimey, creative, alien stuff that I would be. There's got to be a way. There's
Right.
got to be a way for us to undo this.
Yeah.
I've seen too much, and
So you understand Gwen's desperation here.
I do understand her desperation, and what angers me is Jack not being empathetic and coming up with a plan.
Right.
This whole, and we are beating the dead horse, but he doesn't want to listen. He
Right.
has only his, he has this plan. It's only going to be his way, and
Right.
he isn't building a consensus or explaining why in a good way that things have to be the way they are. So it makes for a disjointing TV experience.
Right.
Because I
There's-
go back
because
to
they don't get along.
Yeah.
They're very dysfunctional at this point.
I don't like it when mommy and daddy fight, and
Right.
that also, in a small way, made me very happy because this reminds me Torchwood is not Doctor Who.
Right.
It's set in the Doctor Who universe, but it is a very different style and a more adult storytelling.
Yeah.
And just so well done.
Yeah. It just seems like Jack has some serious trust issues, and is a bit of a control freak, and my way or the highway kind of guy. Now, obviously, that seems to go ease up along the way in this series, but right now it's just for a team that really should be performing better by the end of the season, they're very have such a contentious relationship right now, at this point.
Yeah, and I do find myself loving Tosh more.
Right.
Such a likable, a very interesting character. She is definitely a behind-the-scenes computer.
She does her job.
She does her job. A little
She keeps her head down.
mild-mannered,
Right.
to a certain degree.
Yep.
And since I did take the time to watch Captain Jack, her being in the 40s before Pearl Harbor, and her worry of what's going to happen to me. I'm Japanese.
Right. That's a very bad time to be Japanese.
Yes,
let's
in
just say.
London. So
Yeah.
really, really good stuff.
Yeah. All right. So since you brought up Tosh, let's move on to our second topic. Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. So hopefully you can guess the theme by now.
I can.
All right.
Who are you going to call?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So this I want to talk about. I want to talk about Owen and Tosh and Ianto, and because during the course of this episode, because of all the timey-wiminess going on, we have Owen. He ends up seeing Diane while he's at a bar after being sacked by Jack, and she's trying to convince him to open the rift. And then we have Tosh getting a glimpse of her presumably deceased mother. I think she's dead. And seeing her again, which obviously affects her. She seems very distracted after encountering her mother. And then Ianto sees Lisa, the girl who apparently he was involved with romantically, who ended up becoming a cyberwoman earlier in the season. So I want to get your thoughts on these characters, especially Owen, because Owen, there's a lot going on with Owen in this episode. I want to get your thoughts.
So Owen is in my opinion, the least likable member of Torchwood. I don't think I'm going out on a limb.
No, I don't think you're. I don't think that's a hot take.
Yeah, it is just. I'm just so frustrated, and
Right.
he's not likable, period, on
Right.
almost any of these. So I'm a
He well,
little
he seems to be kind of a sociopath, but he is sympathetic here because of that relationship with Diane.
right. Yeah, I
So
agree. Um,
and and he does get kind of like Jack does kind of overreact to him.
oh, absolutely. But I also, now that I'm going to flip sides,
Yeah.
is part of the reason Jack being such a jerk is because he's based on past experiences working with, um, specifically this guy.
Yeah.
He knows that he's shown his butt. He has not done everything he needs to do. So is part of this because,
Of previous history.
yeah, that there is some baggage there and it's hard for them not to do that, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Owen for the most part comes off as quite the sociopath in this episode.
Yes, he does. And
And Jack obviously he butts heads with Jack a lot in this series.
yes,
And I think there's something to that there is enough history here so that he's Owen is great at pushing Jack's buttons,
yes,
and so that when it comes down to, hey, you didn't do what I told you to do, and now look what's happened.
yes.
It's just kind of like that straw that broke the camel's back, to use the cliche.
No, I agree.
Yeah. Um, so what did you think of Tosh and Ianto? You talked a little bit about Tosh um, being just like a dependable character.
Yeah, and I also, so years ago, my wife made a friend with someone. She was working out with her a fair amount,
Right.
and I didn't care for her too much.
Right.
I tried to like her, but I just something about her just set me off a little wrong.
Okay.
And some of our friends, when it ended poorly, and it ended up being a very, I hate to say breakup on a friendship, but you know what I'm saying. The friendship
Right.
ended.
Right.
And one of our best friends, a lady named Denise, I'm going to give Denise's name, not the other person's name, said Jesse didn't like her. Wasn't that a red flag? Jesse likes
Right.
everyone.
But I was just gonna say you're such an amiable person, friendly and
Yeah.
likable. You get along with just about everybody. So if you don't get along with somebody, that would be a red flag to me, big time.
And I kind of think that, right, Ianto, right?
Yeah.
If he is saying you're wrong,
Right.
perhaps
If Tosh and Ianto are going to rebel against you, yeah, that
you
might.
need to think for a minute and go, whoa, okay,
Right. Yeah.
let
Take
me
a step.
stop for a minute,
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Take a step back. Jeez.
right? Do you not
Yeah,
feel that same way?
I agree, and that's what made that scene I thought so powerful. Is that okay? You could kind of see where Gwen might go against Jack, and you could definitely see where Owen might go against Jack. But
Yeah.
Tosh and Anto,
Yeah.
it seems like obviously Jack has crossed a bridge too far, and that's
Yeah.
what makes it kind of like a little troubling to me toward the end of the episode, because after Jack resurrects, and we should kind of talk about that. This is the first time they've seen Jack killed and come back from the dead.
And this is,
So what did you think about that? While I'm thinking about it,
well,
their reactions, because Jack has kept this from them.
yeah, and that's a big secret.
Right.
Another
Owen shoots Jack in the
Yeah.
head.
Another obscure
Right.
pop culture reference. Back in the 70s, there was a TV show called Family,
Yeah.
and one of the brother of the family, the son, ends
Yeah.
up having a friend who was gay, and this was very groundbreaking.
This is back in the 80s.
80s, yeah, 80s,
Yeah.
and very
This is a big deal in the 80s.
yeah, and he says, my best friend, I found out you had a secret. You had a big secret. And he was more upset about him not telling him than him being gay. So I thought of that, like, Jack's been keeping a secret, a big secret.
Right.
Like, I can't die.
And that's kind of a big deal. You might want to tell your team that.
Yeah. And at least in a part of sharing. And
Right.
I did not remember. I mean, I knew the answer, but watching this going, I was asked, why is it taking him so long to heal this time?
Right.
You know, I mean, how bad had they hurt him that this isn't happening right away? Because we have seen Jack, do the deep breath and then, come back to life. And this one took a while.
This did take a while. I think it was more for dramatic effect than anything.
I think so too. And
because, obviously the big thing with Jack happens when he faces Abaddon, and he just kind of like stands there and like lets Abaddon feed off of his resurrection energy.
Yes.
Like he says, like being a buffet.
Right.
And so yeah, here it does take a while, and if anything, you would think it kind of make everybody like look side-eyed at Owen, because it's like, hey, Owen killed one of our team members. What's to keep him from snapping and killing somebody else?
Yeah, and I don't. And I'm glad everyone made up at the end, right?
Right.
I mean, I'm
right.
glad.
Well, yeah, I want to talk about that too, because
okay.
And this is what seemed a little disturbing to me, is that after trash talking everybody, Jack, after facing Abaddon and eventually resurrecting, like he was so dead he became pale, and they were going to stick him in their morgue. One of those little like drawers, and but he finally comes back to life, and then everybody's just kind of like, well, hey, I guess we're all cool now with everything.
Yeah.
And even Owen is just like, now, granted, Owen's probably feeling guilty, but he starts crying, and Jack tells him like, I forgive you.
Yeah.
So there's no real apology on Jack's part here.
No, there isn't. It's like, hey.
Everybody seems like, okay, well, I guess you died for us, so we'll let it slide.
Mm-hmm.
What's your take on that scene?
I'm glad everyone's back together.
Yeah.
But it did seem a little too neat. Like, okay, oh gosh darn it.
A bit of a hand wave on this one.
Yes, it was. I think a lot of a hand wave, as Karen says.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Friend of the show, Karen Lindsay. Yes. All right, so let's move on to our third and final topic.
Okay.
This should probably go pretty quickly. We're going to need to put a little overtime in on this one. And this, of course, as you couldn't, if you hadn't figured out that the theme of this week's episode was Ghostbusters, shame on you.
Right.
You should know this backwards and forwards. This I want to talk about Billis, the creepy Billis Manger, and Abaddon. So because Billis, go ahead. You
mentioned that you aren't sure how well the CGI
holds up. Yeah. What was your thoughts on this? On creepy Billis.
I liked the creepy caretaker camera guy.
The clock shop guy, yeah.
But when the monster came out, I went, when did we switch over to a Buffy the Vampire Slayer episode?
It did seem like that, didn't it?
It's the mayor. Oh my goodness.
Right.
Which, by the way, you and I's both one of our favorite villains. Big bad, the mayor.
Yeah, I think that was probably the best villain that Buffy the Vampire Slayer ever had, was the mayor in that whole season 2.
Yeah.
Or was it 3? I don't remember.
Yeah, it must have been 3, because with Faith, and it was just
Yeah. So, but that was the best season in my opinion.
Yeah. It just seemed a little cheesy.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it worked.
Well, just all of a sudden we have this big, ginormous monster, And that was kind of cool to see this something really huge stomping around Cardiff. But it was kind of interesting that there wasn't much more property destruction from this big giant creature.
Yes,
Rather conveniently, in my opinion.
I agree.
Um, but you know, you got to give points for at least for the ambition of the episode. I will give you that. That they wanted to go huge and impressive. And back in 2006, it obviously seemed a lot more impressive than it does today. But I thought that was interesting. Now Billis, he owns this clock shop, A Stitch in Time,
Great
which
name.
is, yeah, obviously on point for that one. Now, do we ever get a good explanation of how Billis can just walk back and forth through time?
I do not believe we did.
I don't remember one.
Yeah.
So I kind of would have liked a little more backstory on this character. I think probably he would have been a much more impressive villain if he didn't just go like, okay, here I'm being enigmatic, I'm showing Gwen a vision, I'm stabbing Reese out of nowhere, and then I'm gonna raise this like huge demon Abaddon to stomp around Cardiff.
Yeah.
So it seemed like he was a very simple comic book villain from back in the 60s. You know, like there wasn't much depth to him.
Mm-hmm.
Or am I wrong in that assessment?
No, I think that's very appropriate. He just,
Yeah.
I think it could have been a little bit like, I loved him. I loved the
Yeah.
creepiness of him.
Just better executed. Yeah.
Mhm.
Now
Right.
I thought one scene I thought was effective was where he just shows up inside the cells at Torchwood and stabs Reese
Mhm.
and then just like disappears. Like, you know, like it just seemed like that it was like, no matter what you do, even I give you a warning, and even though you're trying to stop it, you can't stop me.
Yeah.
And I thought that was you know, a very, very powerful scene, in my opinion.
Yes.
Okay. Anything else about these two characters?
No, like I said, good villains.
Yeah.
But we'll see what happens, right?
Yeah, I just would have liked a little more depth to this character
I agree.
of Billis Manager. I mean, he had the potential to become a great villain, but I think he was kind of underdeveloped. It could have been better.
I agree.
All right. So, do you have any favorite quotes of this episode?
I do have a couple. You mentioned one already.
Yeah, go ahead.
Said, if he feeds on life, I'm an all-you-can-eat buffet.
Right. That was a good line. I like that. Yeah. I have, let's see, from Jack, where he's talking, they were talking about Roman soldier, you know, that appears out of, and it gets picked up by the police. Jack says, under any other circumstances, an exuberant Roman soldier would be my idea of a perfect morning.
Yeah, I like that too.
Which was a great Jack line.
The other thing I really, really loved, Jack has said this a couple of ways.
Yeah.
And Gwen asks him, Jack, what would have tempted you? What visions would have convinced you to open the rift? And Jack says, the right kind of doctor.
Right.
And they don't know what that means.
No, it's just a little nod to the Doctor Who fans.
Yes, which I loved.
Yeah, that was one thing we didn't really talk about, was that at the end of the episode, there's this cliffhanger.
Right.
And it's kind of like, it connects to Utopia, the Doctor Who episode Utopia, as we later find out, where Jack kind of like runs after the TARDIS as it's like right by charging up by the rift, and just jumps on and hangs on.
Yeah.
We find that out on Doctor Who, but here he just kind of like, we see the bubbling hand of the Doctor that Jack kind of keeps handy. Get it? And it starts bubbling, and then we hear like the TARDIS sound, and you know, the vorp kind of sound, and And then he just kind of disappears, and everybody's just like, huh, Jack's gone. What's
Yeah.
up with that?
Yeah, that was
Like, something's taken him. Jack's gone.
I really made me want to go back,
Right.
to see some of those episodes. I just,
Yeah.
Jack is a great character, and I so hope he comes back to the Doctor Who universe. I know there's Torchwood episodes on
Right.
Big Finish audio, but I would just love to see him proper.
Well, I'll talk about this shortly, because I did, hear some rumors that maybe Captain Jack and maybe Gwen, Eve Miles' character, might be appearing on Doctor Who Series 11.
I have seen that same rumor, and
It's
I am going, oh, please, please, please.
Yeah, but we've been burned by these rumors before,
Yes, we
obviously.
have.
So
Yeah.
I wouldn't take it with a grain of salt, but it's an interesting rumor. And Chris Chibnall, obviously being the showrunner of Torchwood, would that would be kind of a nice nod to kind of like bring back Torchwood at least for an episode or
Yes,
two.
I agree.
Yeah,
That would be
great.
awesome.
And that would be great.
Mhm.
You definitely want to see Jack's reaction to the Doctor being female all of a sudden.
Yes, and I know we're not. I think River Song is gone. I think
Yes.
we will not get her again.
Right.
But that would also be a character you would love to see. How she reacts.
It reacted to the 13th Doctor.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. I'm sure being River, she might be down with it. She might be cool with it.
Yes, she would. Very nice.
Yeah. But one of my quotes that I had. Oh wait, I did that one. So do you have any other quotes? I should say. Oh, you did the right kind of doctor. You did that one.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. So my second quote. This is exchanged between Andy and Gwen, where Andy's like saying, "I've seen you use that smile on a lot of people," and Gwen's all, "What smile?" And Andy says, that smile you use to reassure people when deep down you know that everything's gone to shit.
Yeah. My last one is from Owen, and I'm going to clean this up. But
Okay.
What? So I shouldn't have bothered? Who the blank are you anyway, Jack Harkness? You don't even exist. We've looked. So
Right.
if you're not even a real person, then why the heck, censored, should I follow your orders? And that's when Jack says, get out.
Right. Yeah. So that, you can always say what the F, but,
Right.
Yeah. But, that was a good quote.
What the frack.
With the frack, you could do that too. Yeah, exactly.
Or frill.
Yeah.
All the different.
All the Frel, yes, from Farscape, yes.
Yes, and Battlestar Galactica, yeah.
Which makes it kind of silly. It's like, well, it's just a different rearrangement of letters, guys.
Yes,
we still
it
get the
is.
same, yeah. But apparently, this certain arrangement people freak out about.
Absolutely.
I had one exchange between Jack and Gwen, where this is the big rant that he goes off on them, where he says, "You're in a united front now. Toshiko, the poor girl who will screw any passing alien that gives her a pendant. Owen, so strong, he gets in a cage with a weevil, desperate to be mauled. Ianto, hiding a cyber girlfriend in the basement. Your three comrades pump bullets into her, remember?" And Gwen says, "I've got to get Reese back." And Jack replies, "Yeah, because you're so in love with Reese, you spend half your time in Owen's bed." Damn.
Yeah, so sad.
Hardcore, Jack.
Exactly.
Too far.
Way too far.
Yeah, but anyway, I just thought it was good. All right, any other quotes before we move on?
Nope, I'm good.
All right, so what's your rating for this episode?
So I'm gonna give it a I'm being a little generous, but I'm gonna give it 8 out of 10. Oven cleaning mitts.
Okay. You gave it 8 out of 10?
Yes.
All right. I'm actually in sync with you on this one.
Okay.
I give it 8 glowing doctor hands.
Oh, nice.
Thank you.
Very good.
All bubbly.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. All right. So, do you have any reverse the polarity segment?
I do not,
All right.
but I'm looking forward to hearing yours.
Yes. Well, I have a reverse the polarity segment as we go into the future from 2006. I thought if you enjoyed this episode of End of Days, you might enjoy the Pandorica Opens.
Okay. Yes.
And this, of course, is the 12th episode from Series 5 in 2010, written by Stephen Moffat. And this is where we have the 11th Doctor and Amy Pond, following a message from River Song, arrive in Roman Britain on Earth in AD 102, where they find River Song posing as Cleopatra. River shows the Doctor a Vincent van Gogh painting titled The Pandorica Opens, which depicts the TARDIS exploding. And the Doctor realizes that Pandorica is a fabled prison for the universe's deadliest being, and it must be stored in a memorable location near these coordinates of Stonehenge. So they go to Stonehenge, and the Doctor and Amy and River find the Pandorica, which turns out to be a giant metal box outfitted with every type of lock imaginable. The Pandorica is transmitting a signal amplified by Stonehenge's rocks across the universe, and River warns that the signal is drawing everything that ever hated him to Earth that night. The Doctor ends up getting aided later on by a volunteer group of Roman legionnaires. So we have Romans, just like on Torchwood. The Centurion in charge of them turns out to be Amy's fiance, Rory, who everybody thought was like absorbed into the crack of the universe back in the previous episode, Cold Blood, and erased from existence. Now, Amy comes around after being knocked out by a damaged Cyberman. So we have a Cyberman, just like Cyberwoman. She doesn't remember Rory, and that obviously bothers him. And the Doctor's enemies end up beginning to orbit overhead, and the Doctor buys himself additional time with a threatening Pandorica speech, which is pretty epic. And River tries to bring the TARDIS to Stonehenge, and outside force takes control of it, pilots it to Amy's house in the President's Day. I'm not sure what that audio is, but okay. And after River leaves the TARDIS, the scanner screen cracks in the same shape as the cracks in the universe, as a menacing voice says, "Silence will fall." And then River discovers landing patterns in Amy's garden and sees that someone has broken into the house. She identifies her current space-time coordinates as June 26, 2010, the date that the Doctor identified as the onset of a time-energy explosion that caused cracks in the universe. Kind of like a time rift. And exactly. So later on, Rory's trying to is suddenly remembered by Amy, who had forgotten him. But his Auton identity emerges when he unwillingly shoots her in the stomach and she dies. So we have somebody being shot, although in the stomach, or you could just say it's kind of like being knifed in the stomach, just like Billis did to Reese. Yeah. And the Doctor struggles against his captors, who reveal they have formed an alliance to imprison him in the Pandorica. And they believe that knowing the TARDIS exploding would cause cracks, destroying reality, they believe only the Doctor can operate the TARDIS, and therefore removing him will prevent the explosion that saves the universe. As the Doctor is sealed into the Pandorica, explosions surround the Earth and space before everything fades to black and silence falls.
Yeah, just a wonderful episode. In a lot of ways, my sentimental favorite,
right?
End of season pair of episodes.
Yeah. Right.
So yeah, just great stuff.
Yeah. So if you kind of like this Torchwood episode, I think you'd probably like this a little better. Just saying.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it is a lot of the similar themes. Very good job of catching that.
Yeah.
But just a little better execution.
Right.
So yeah, good stuff. Very good stuff, my friend.
Thank you. Now, unfortunately, we don't have any feedback this week because, again, Rob Southgate has not posted our previous episode, so nobody was able to comment on it.
Oh
And
no.
or well, they commented on that one, but they didn't know we were going to record End of Days.
Okay.
So we don't have any feedback on End of Days from
Okay.
either Holly or Paul, our regulars.
Well, if they want to double up next
Yes.
time,
Yes.
how can they give us some feedback?
Yeah, so hopefully we'll be back on track shortly so that you guys can give us some feedback. But if you want to do that, if you want to drop us a line, whenever you get to hear this, you can drop us a line at nextstopeverywheresmg@gmail.com. Don't forget the SMG. Or you can reach us on Facebook at Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast, the award-winning Doctor Who podcast. And our Twitter account, of course, at Next Stop SMG on Twitter. Don't forget the SMG again there as well. We'd love to hear from you. Doesn't have to be just Holly and Paul, although we obviously love hearing from them. But if anybody else wants to drop us a line, let us know what you think of Torchwood or the Chris Chibnall Torchwood episodes, or just Torchwood in general. Drop us a line. Let us know. We'd love to hear from you. And Jesse, where can they hear you?
So I can be reached at Jesse Jackson DFW on Twitter.
Yep.
You can hear me on Set Lusting Bruce, the
Right.
Bruce Springsteen podcast, and depending on when this comes out, he says tongue in cheek,
Right.
I have a episode that is pretty special. Mike Scully, who is a writer on The Simpsons and
Wow.
was involved with the Simpsons movie, had been showrunner many years, Parks and Rec. He joins me and we talk about his Springsteen journey and a story about trying to get the boss on The Simpsons. And it's
Really?
a pretty funny story, yes.
That's cool.
So look for
Oh,
that.
he hasn't done it yet, has he?
No.
He's one of the few celebrities that hasn't been on The Simpsons.
Yeah, and I will I was telling my friend Sam about this, and then I also told him the story about Neil Gaiman being on Lucifer, and I'm sure that will be covered on the Fandom Zone. If you guys already have done.
We have covered it. Yes, we have. So we talked about that. So
and
definitely check that out.
Yes, absolutely. So and Charles.
It was episode 140, I believe. We talked about that.
So I believe there is a blog where you can find all kinds of geeky things. Tell me about that.
All right. So, if you want to get a hold of me, you can get a hold of me on the Twitter machine at Charles Skaggs or at Charles Skaggs on the Instagram. Google Plus for all you crazy kids on the Google Plus. Shout out to Karen. Facebook, of course, at Charles Skaggs. And, again, that aforementioned blog of geeky things. Come on.
Damn good coffee. And hot.
Damn good coffee and hot. Where I talk about all the things that we talk about here on Next Stop Everywhere, including Doctor Who and Torchwood. And I talk about my other podcasts that I do for Southgate Media, the Fandom Zone podcast, which we just talked about, that I do with Karen Lindsay, where we talk about comic book shows on television, or Ghost with the Twin Peaks podcast that I do with Zan Sprouse, wife of comic book artist Chris Sprouse, where we talk about all things Twin Peaks and David Lynch, and Titan Talk, the Titans podcast that I do with you, Jesse. And we need to record some episodes of that because we're getting some news coming in about that show.
Yes, we should. So,
and we need to do another episode of that. So
absolutely.
It's been a while. So we need to record, I think it's episode 6 of that. We need to do that.
Absolutely.
But if you're looking forward to the upcoming Titans show on the DC Universe digital series that's coming out, that you can keep in touch with us there as we build up to the show. We talk about the various Titans comics and whatnot. And if you enjoy us here at Next Stop Everywhere, hopefully you also enjoy us on Titan Talk.
Absolutely.
All right.
Good.
Anything else before we move on?
Nope. I think.
Okay.
So what
I
are
know. I
we?
think we're gonna talk about next week. Yeah, I don't have Paul here from Australia to set me up. So
Yeah,
hi, Paul.
exactly.
Um, but hopefully we'll get back on track soon.
Okay.
So next time on Next Stop Everywhere, we're going to talk about Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. And this is the first episode from Torchwood Series 2,
Not the
written again,
movie, right?
not the movie. This is Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, the TV episode, which features James Marsters from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So continuing that Buffy theme, who of course played Spike on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and he's been on other things, including Runaways right now on Hulu. He's really good on that. Um, so he plays a character by the name of Captain John Hart, and if you remember that episode, this is a really good one.
It is.
And I think I think it might be my favorite episode of Torchwood.
Wow. Okay.
Single episode. I do like Children of Earth is my favorite story,
I agree.
but as a single episode, I think this is my favorite single episode.
Mm-hmm.
Written by Chris Chibnall, and definitely looking forward to talking about this one because again, obviously one of my favorites.
Yes, absolutely.
So probably a high rating from me on this one.
I imagine. So good.
Yep. All right. So do we have a quote to lead us out?
We do. Thank you, Charles. Thank you, listeners. We're going to end with, there is a saying here on earth. A very old, very wise friend of mine taught me it. An injury to one is an injury to all. And when people act accordingly to the philosophy, the human race is the finest species in the universe.
That's an excellent quote.
Just saying, that's from day 4. The episode of Torchwood. So.
Oh, you mean the Children of Earth?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Yes, that's very wise and profound words.
And very needed in today's society.
Brother, you aren't kidding.
Yes.
All right. So thanks, everybody, for listening to Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast, the award-winning Doctor Who podcast. I love saying that, obviously.
I do too.
And come on back. We're going to talk Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. And I think it's going to be fun. So come on back, and we'll see you next time right here on Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. Bye, everybody.
A Tony Award, which someone is doing tonight. But, yes, it is a big deal.
Oh, is Sting winning a Tony Award? I'm just kidding.
Yes.
I'm just kidding.
Yes. Bruce is getting a special honorary Tony tonight.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess he's won Grammys and he's won Tonys.
So the only thing he's missing is an Emmy. So.
Oh, he doesn't have an Oscar.
Yeah, he does.
He does?
Streets
For
of
what?
Philadelphia. He wrote the song Streets
Oh,
of
that's
Philadelphia,
right.
and that won an Oscar.
So that's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's almost got the EGOT.
Yeah, that's the famous story.
He needs to do a TV special.
Yes. Well, that's what someone said. They should film Broadway.
Right.
Put it on a special, and then see if it'd be Emmy nominated. Right. Then see if he could win that. Yeah. The famous story is he went to visit his parents. His father was still alive at the time.
Yeah.
And he put the Oscar on the table, and his dad said, "I'm never telling anyone what to do with their life again." So yeah, so very cool.